Love, live, life. Life can be glorious and hideous. Stick your feet to the ground, but don't think you are counted out. Don't let the wind pull you and tear you apart. Let yourself live freely and love, and you'll be happy. No limits. Just keep on.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another Iron Will podcast with me, Shane Warner, and
John Chase.
So what this podcast is all about is we are trying to get stories from people that have been through a traumatic experience in their lives and came out a different person.
Yeah, they have all created an iron will. So what is an iron will? A burning determination that cannot be stopped or hindered by anything, willing to do anything to get a desired outcome, extremely resilient. So what we like to say is just keep punching.
Yeah. So sit back and relax, and we're going to start the show.
Yeah, my childhood is probably the best place to start.
Okay. So today we have Grace Miller on the podcast with us, and Grace is she's a personal trainer at Fit Club Gym, and that's where I know her from. We're just gonna get Grace's story and like from childhood and stuff like that, and what she's like, what made her want to decide to be a personal trainer. Awesome. Can you just go over your childhood a little bit?
Yeah. So I would definitely say that is probably like my biggest struggle as far as like the theme of the podcast. I would say that's like the thing that I've, kind of battled to overcome as an adult. My earliest memory was me getting molested in a forest in Washington. So
yeah, that's hard.
That was my first memory. Like, welcome to life.
Yeah.
Do you know how old you were?
I was 4 years old.
Okay.
So that was my first memory, was fight or flight. Because you remember those things that just, put you in that physiological response of fight or flight.
Right.
So
I don't understand how anyone can do that, to a 4-year-old child.
Seriously.
Yeah. It's just.
Was it somebody you knew? Was it?
So there were actually, it was very confusing. And it was the confusion, I think, that impacted me. There were two separate incidences. One I remembered, one I didn't, but they happened around the same time. So that's what was very confusing to me. And I never really got the full story. So we lived in Washington on an island, and that's where, like, I remember these bits and pieces, but one was like a family friend. It was like their oldest son and his friend, and that's the one I remember. So that was someone I knew.
Yeah.
And it was very uncomfortable being around them, like, especially because my parents didn't know and I was too young to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
But they were like, hey, we're going to dinner with these guys. And I was like,
scared.
No thanks.
Yeah.
So I remember being like, actually, I'm going to stay in the car.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't know why. They never really understood why I would act up whenever we were going to their house. But it was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to face him again. And then the other thing that I only learned about later was there was a construction worker that also molested me that I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
So my parents were confused because they thought that that was the thing that happened, but I was like not remembering it correctly. But I remembered 50% of it, and just I didn't know the other 50%. So that was really confusing.
With that being your first memory, like how did you trust people?
Exactly.
Did you have trust issues?
Serious trust issues with kind of I just didn't feel comfortable in my body.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest thing, is you just lose your sense of sense of safety, I should say.
Yeah,
You lose safety. So I didn't trust my parents. I had a very hard time with them growing up because I had this feeling, why can't you protect me?
Yeah.
Why didn't you protect me?
Right.
And then, so they apparently, one of the reasons why they moved to Utah was to kind of get away from, because the construction worker guy he like confessed in court about what he had done. So they knew that had happened.
And
I didn't remember that.
Your dad's a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And so was he involved in that case, or?
He, at that time, I think he was a judge, but he did like different. Oh no, he worked in Seattle. He worked in the city, so he kind of did different things. But I think that they thought as parents, and especially back at that time, because this was like the early '90s, it was like, oh, like she'll probably forget this.
Yeah.
It probably like they did what they could. What they knew, they actually had me go to DCFS when we first moved to Utah. So they thought that they were like doing something about it.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was very confusing for me because again, I was only remembering that other thing.
Yeah.
They didn't even know about that.
Oh my
So they were like thinking it was for this guy that, had gotten in trouble, had gone to jail for this basically. So they were thinking it was one thing, but it was like
kind
more
of
than that.
resolved for them at least.
Yeah, they thought it was resolved.
Yeah.
And then I was having this just weird interview with this DCFS worker, and I was like 5 when we moved to Utah. So I was so young, you know? Like
Right.
I have a son who's 5.
Yeah.
And I just cannot imagine. I can't imagine knowing something like that happened to
Yeah.
him. I would
right.
be destroyed.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously kind of a helicopter parent because of that.
Yeah.
Like,
Is
like,
is he your only one, or do you have?
I have a daughter too.
Yeah.
When I had a daughter, I was like, oh no.
Yeah. I'm sure that affects you as a parent. Like,
Yeah.
like I just can't even comprehend like the feelings you must have like being a parent. Like you said, you're kind of a helicopter parent, and so yeah, it's just trusting people is important, and it sounds like those things that happened to you really affected your trust level of people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The thing is like I'm a parent. I have 6 daughters, all
Oh,
daughters.
no way.
Yeah. I got a lot of kids.
It's gonna pay for a lot of
yeah.
weddings.
Yeah.
I have one
Oh,
turning
man.
18 this year. So,
Whoa.
my wife had similar things as you when she was growing up, and so did I, and so we ended up, having to deal with that stuff through your 20s. Like you don't realize how much damage it does until you start
relationships
yeah,
in the future.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And then you start having kids and all that kind of stuff, and you realize the helicopter parent thing. I think that gets a bad name, but I don't think it's bad.
Not necessarily.
So, like, you can't control every situation, right? But
Yeah.
this day and age, you do have to be protective
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
your kids. You do. I
Well,
feel like too many
there's
people...
too many ways for them to get bullied or
Yeah. And
like,
you're not...
There's a lot of neglectful parenting too.
There
I
is.
noticed. Like you go to a playground,
Yeah.
parents will just be on their
Yeah.
cell phones.
Yeah. No,
That's it.
my wife actually, not to get too graphic, caught a guy actually jerking off in his
No.
pants
oh my god.
Really?
at the park in front of all of the other parents.
That's
And the moms didn't even have
What?
They didn't have a clue, and here he is with his hand in his pants, watching the kids.
That's terrifying.
My wife saw him. We lived across the street from she saw him walking around, eyeballing kids,
Oh no.
and she's like, "John, I'll be right back." And she walks out to the park, goes across the street, and there he is sitting on a bench. And the parents don't even see it. And she just called him right out on it.
Yeah.
He didn't even
Yeah.
speak English. He wasn't Hispanic. He was like,
Russian.
yeah, it was somewhere east. Anyways, they had just moved there. The kid obviously probably had like problems with pornography first, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where it leads. But she called him straight out on it, and he was like freaking out, and all the moms were like, "What's going on?" You're right.
And-
They
Yeah, and if they would have
And that's
been
right in front of
paying
their eyes.
attention, yeah.
I hate that.
So if they would have been paying attention, like you should
Yeah.
be, like a
so
micro helicopter
yeah.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like helicopter, I mean, some
You're just
parents might
being
think that
aware.
my wife has been that, but she is just more conscious
Yeah.
and aware of the surroundings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has taught our kids to be aware of their surroundings.
Yeah.
And yes, make a judgment about if a guy feels janky,
Yeah.
you stay
Yeah.
away. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you're not judging them by their clothing or race or anything like that.
Maybe avoid that
It's
park or something.
You
like
try to
that.
help the kids like judge their, like the character of someone,
Yeah.
right? And that can be taught just over time.
That's true.
Anyway, so don't ever feel like you're being too
Yeah.
much, helicopter parent. It's like those are usually the parents that say that are usually the ones that just let their kids do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you gotta be protective this day and age.
I'd rather over protect them where they know that they matter and they're important and they deserve respect.
Yeah.
Than they never know how important or how special they are.
Yeah. I was never told that I was loved growing up. My parents never said I love you. And my mom later said, "No, I did." I'm like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember
Didn't
once.
stand out.
So it didn't stand out. So like the level of how much I pour into my kids now is just so important. Yeah. Right?
I love that.
How much I tell them every single day. I mean, my little daughter, she's 4. So when you're talking about this, it's like bringing up tons of feelings, right?
Yeah.
I have a little 4-year-old. She's my youngest. And she, every time I get home for the day, like, she runs up. She's like, "I missed you so much." I'm like, "I've only been gone for a few hours." But it's awesome. I love that. And then I act as excited as she is.
Yeah.
Right? "Oh, I missed you so much." And it's that kind of stuff that I think also helps protect them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they know they're loved. They
Showing,
know that they're safe.
love.
It's not just controlling every action because they're going to get in trouble. They're going to
Yeah.
get hurt. They're going to get, you can't control all that stuff.
Right.
And sometimes they will be bullied. You can't control it all.
Yeah.
But you can still help them develop a character of strength and bravery, courage, right?
Yeah.
Stability, all those types of characteristics. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
like that.
So, you went to DCSF, and we were talking about your dad being a lawyer and stuff like that. So, was he gone a lot, or?
Yeah, he was busy. I have 7 other siblings.
Yeah.
So big family.
Yeah, I know your
wow.
sister,
Yeah.
Lee. Yeah.
So we also had foster kids. And that was kind of something that was kind of like a really challenging time in our family because we had 8 kids at that point.
Yeah.
But my sister Lee actually, she had her best friend. She was having issues like with her family, with her mom, and anyway, so my parents said that they would like step in and kind of parent her and her other 2 sisters, and it was like this whole ordeal with courts and everything. But my parents were trying to do the right thing. But yeah, that was 3 more people in our house,
Yeah.
and they were obviously struggling with their mother. She struggled with addiction, and it was a really tricky time for them. But it was a tricky time for my siblings too, because it was even less like time and attention with our mom. And it ended up really backfiring in my family.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even realize the impact of that until, really the last like 5-10 years. But it was when I was like starting to go through puberty. So it was really confusing for me because like when women, of course, when they start like getting their period, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You're young and you're just like, what is this? I don't know what's going
what's
on.
happening? Yeah.
So my body was just being weird, changing, and I didn't really have like a parent to go to talk to. And not only did I not really trust my parents, but then when, you don't have someone to go to when you're going through that weird but natural phase of, becoming a woman or whatever, it was just really confusing for me. So I kind of would go to like my foster sisters for like for advice, and they had like some of them had some confusing things to teach me about like sex and all that, and it was really confusing.
Yeah.
So it was a weird time in my family because we didn't really have like a parent to go to. It was like our parents were there, but they weren't there.
Right.
My parents, they've obviously, especially my mom, like she felt really bad about it. Like she felt horrible about what had happened, but they were trying to do what was right in the moment. They were trying to be good people, and they're Christians. They wanted to like, take on the world and hopefully help these people. But of course there was a consequence to that. And that was just, there wasn't as much care for their own children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I lost even more touch with like my parents. It was like I